Do you know that moment when you want to change something? You're motivated, inspired, totally ready, and then you do nothing. According to today's guests, that's not laziness and it's not lack of discipline either. In fact, there's a part of your brain that is specifically designed to hold you back. It's ancient, it's powerful, and it quietly blocks you from the life that you want. Join us and listen in to today's interview. Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Be sure to check the show notes and grab your free copy of the True Wellness Checklist so you can get started on your journey to true wellness right away. Now, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Today's conversation is probably going to strike a nerve, but in the best possible way. So if you've ever wondered why, you can really, really want something, know exactly what it is that you have to do, feel really motivated and ready to go, and then somehow still not do it. We see it in our practice. So our guest says, that's not a character flaw. It's actually biology, and it's built into our brain. And I'll tell you, he should know because Kam Knight is a mentor, international speaker, and a best-selling author on more than a dozen books on mental, emotional, and physical performance, right? His work has helped over, 500,000 people break through that invisible wall that's inside their mind. And his books are, quite frankly, considered the gold standard in their fields because he does bring a fresh, unconventional insights that really challenge everything that we assume about motivation and discipline and human potential. So today he's here to talk about a force inside all of us, okay, that actually stops us from taking action even when we really want it. And he calls it internal resistance, the part of the mind that's designed to hold us back, keep us safe, and of course, stop us from growing. So this episode is your chance to understand really the brick wall that you hit when you really want more and finally learn how to get past it. So Kam Knight, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Dr. D. That was a fascinating and awesome introduction. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Kam, I love this topic. And when we connected, I was like, this is perfect
Yeah.
because, so I'm a functional medicine practitioner and we work with people on their health all the time. And that's where they are. They're like, yes, I'm going to change my health. I'm so excited. Let's go. And then they're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And somewhere along the line, they're like, well, wait a second. I don't think I could ever get rid of gluten, right?
Yeah.
That's just like, whoa, what's going on here? And then all these things start to creep in, even though it wasn't their original intention.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
talk to me about that, because how
Yeah.
do we break free? I know our listeners want a way out.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying that I do talk about a concept of internal resistance,
Mhm.
and it answers a question I had my entire life, which is why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't or don't do it.
Hmm.
Something that you'd kind of alluded to. And this was something I kind of struggled most of my life, especially growing up. I had a lot more aspirations and drives to do things. I wanted to do well in school to get into an Ivy League school, and then from there, I have get into a prestigious firm. And although I got into a decent school, it was an Ivy League, and although I got a decent job, it wasn't with one of the big five at the time. Now it's a big four accounting firms. And this was really a pattern that I was experiencing in a lot of areas, especially if I wanted a diet or if I wanted to work on a skill. I would get motivated, I would get excited, And oftentimes I wouldn't start. And then if I did start, I would stop before making progress. And if I managed to make progress, I would sabotage myself before getting to the end. And I
Yes.
did this over and over. And so diving into this work, I did eventually realize there's a part of our brain designed to hold us back.
Mhm.
It's hard to believe, but there's a part of our own mind that is built to keep us from growing. And as you had given my classic, it's a brick wall that you hit, I call it resistance, and I do exactly just that. And it's a brick wall that we hit no matter when anytime we want to do something, no matter how much we want to do it, we can't. And what I
Mm,
realized is that the part of the brain that creates wants and desires, it
yes.
works separately and independent from the part that allows us to act on that desire. Now,
Yes.
this is extremely important, so I'll say it one more time. The part of the brain that creates wants works separate from the part that allows us to act on wants.
Okay, so we're literally, like, operating from 2 parts of our brains when we
Yes,
want one specific outcome. Uh,
exactly.
that's a little problematic, isn't it?
It is. So if we ever experience that tug of war where like I want to do this thing but I can't, or should I go for this or should I go for that? Well,
Mhm,
it's because of these two things. And what's really important to understand is the part of the brain that creates want, which I call the wanting mechanism,
mhm,
in many ways it's pretty unrestrained. So
mhm,
it's creating endless wants one after another at a pace faster than any one person can achieve.
mhm.
And so this part wasn't designed or built to check to see if our want is achievable or fulfilling or safe.
Yes.
Its only goal is to just create want. And in a way, it's just creating endless wants all the time. A-
Like
And
a child.
yeah,
We're all
exactly.
children.
More or less. And I'll use that as a great analogy once I talk about this other part. So we have this other part of the brain that, which I call resistance. It actually checks and evaluates all the wants that the brain produces, and
Mm,
it sees if we should do it or should not do it. And if it doesn't give the green light, then we can't do it. This is why a person can have this strong motivation and drive to change, especially in health, but then us not make that change because a part that gives a green light is different from the part that actually created the motivation.
yes.
And so, what's really important to understand is a person's brain can both create a desire for something and at the same time hold us back from it. And
Yeah.
for a long time, I used to think whoever created humanity must have been a really sick and evil person
Oh, no.
because how could they do this? How could this create this strong want in us and then keep us from going after it and deal with that pain of not having it?
Yeah.
But when you come from this perspective, it makes much more sense because there are two different processes at play.
Yes.
And I don't want to keep talking, but I just want to throw one more thing to help set the stage for this conversation.
Mhm, mhm.
So, anytime a want or desire comes up, it gets analyzed by this part of the brain to see if we should do it. And the way it analyzes it, it goes through a whole series of criterias or like a checklist of items of to see whether we should do it or not. And if any of the if the desire is not in line with any of the items, it will prevent action.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter how much motivation you have, how simple the solution is, or even how much benefit we can derive.
Yes.
What matters is understanding how these parts work and how they get in our way. And to say one last thing before I hand you over the mic is that both parts can get in the way. It
Yeah.
seems like it's just resistance that gets in the way, but really our own wants can get in the way too. So,
Absolutely. Sometimes my brain is a little like a squirrel, like, I want this and I want to do that and I wanted this and I wanted, and I'm like, well, Danielle, how many things could you possibly do at any
yes.
given moment? So let's check in here, right? So
Yeah.
what I hear you saying is it's kind of like, so going back to like gluten as an example that we
Yeah.
kind of started with. So someone's like, I really want to get my health better. I recognize like, hey, I have this thyroid issue and gluten really impacts my thyroid.
Yeah.
But then the other side of the brain was like, yeah, but it's hard to eat out with your friends if you're
Yes.
eating gluten. And then the part goes like, oh, well, that
Yeah.
sounds hard? Do I not want to
Mm.
be social? And then it goes off on its own little tangent.
Ye
Is that what's happening? Explain to
Mhm. More or less. So there's a lot of criteria as the brain evaluates, and one of the criteria does deal with people.
us.
So we humans are pack animals. So we evolved to live and survive in a pack. In
Yes.
fact, much of our intelligence surprisingly didn't evolve to help us maneuver through the wild. In
Yeah.
fact, it doesn't take a lot of intelligence to maneuver through the wild because we could see like insects as small as bees and ants do just fine with brains so small
Right.
we can't see them. Majority of our intelligence came to help us maneuver within the pack.
Mhm.
And so our brain became very sensitive to the people around us, and it doesn't want to do anything that might get us obviously ostracized or kicked out of the group. So we want to fit in. So anytime we do something new, our brain will filter through, oh, well, this will limit my ability to interact with people. People might judge me for doing this.
Mhm.
I might get shamed if I
Mhm.
don't act more like them. So that's one part of the resistance, but there's a lot more stuff that goes on. If a person has done a bit of personal development, we hear things about beliefs and comfort zones.
Yes.
So if a person doesn't believe that success is possible, so for example, the going back to the example of the gluten, oh, I gotta give up gluten. If there's a belief that, oh my gosh, it's gonna be impossible to give up gluten because I eat bread and I do sandwiches at lunch and all of that, then the brain is gonna create resistance.
Yes.
Now, what's really interesting about beliefs is that we can believe something is possible, but deep down not believe it's possible for us. So we
Right.
might hear, oh, cut out gluten. Yeah, I could do that. But then deep down, we may not believe that it's possible for us. And that thing can slow our progress as we try to do it.
Mm.
But it goes deeper than that. It can go into our self image and identity. And I think you may already know a little about self image. Like our brain is designed to have us operate
Mhm.
within the self image and identity that we have created for ourselves.
Yes.
But there's another side of the coin. A lot of times our brain will keep us from doing anything that might damage or confront our self image and identity. And I'll give a quick example. So I know some people who have self image that they're smart, cool, or they're tech savvy, or they're this great artist, comedian, or they have this amazing story.
Yes.
But they will rarely apply themselves or put themselves out there because if things don't go well, they have to face the fact that they're not this great self image that they've created for themselves.
Yes.
So it's much easier to not do the thing and hold on to the self image than to do it and face the possibility of proving it wrong. So, given this example of the gluten free, a person might have the self image that they're disciplined or that they are, good at changing or creating a diet. But they'll have resistance to actually doing it because if it doesn't work out or
Mhm.
or they experience more challenges, then it means damaging their identity and their brain will resist them from doing that. But it
Yes.
goes even deeper, but I wanna just kind of end here because I think people can kinda get a perspective of how the criterias and checklists work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's funny because what you're saying is at some level at maybe it's not conscious for us. So at some subconscious level, we are placing ourselves in this box that already defines what we can and cannot do,
Yes.
where we will and will not be successful, and who we are and who we are
Or
not.
yes.
I'll tell you, Cam, you own a business, I own a business. Social media is like the thing. And I know for me, I have this huge resistance to social media.
Yes.
So it's that same thing. It's like, well, I know I have to do this and I'm supposed to do this, but I don't want to do this,
Yes.
but I should do this. So I do it, but it's like I still don't want to do it. And so
Yeah.
it goes back and forth. How do
Yeah.
we how do we resolve this dilemma?
Yeah. So this is a question that helps to ask a little bit later down the road because oftentimes when I talk about I do resistance and they're like, well, how do we get over the resistance? Well, first we have to really understand what's going on. and we're really kind of scratching the surface. And I have some really good tools that we can address, but it does help to kind of understand more of what's actually happening because, like you said, in a lot of ways, we put ourselves in a box.
Mhm.
And in many ways, since we were young, we had already decided most of the decisions that we're going to make in life,
Yes.
because we put ourselves in a box that, hey, I'm social or I'm not social, or I have this self image and I don't have it, or I have these beliefs. Those things are making all of our decisions. And so we might, as an adult, come to an option of, hey, should I diet or not, or should I cut out gluten? And the decision was already made before we actually were even presented with it.
Right.
It's just that we don't know, and we are trying to act on the decision, but our resistance is leading us down to the outcome that was already decided. And what's also important to understand is, especially as it relates to the self-image and the beliefs, a lot of these things we didn't choose. As we're growing up, our brain came to the conclusion that we weren't good enough, and this was a self image that we needed to uphold, or this is the way that we needed to act to get people to like, love, and respect us. And it has been creating pressure to do that. And one of the ways it does that is by keeping us from doing anything that might damage these things that we're working with. So that's really important to understand. For the brain, it's actually a survival thing. It really thinks we need to uphold this self image, and we need to uphold some of the beliefs that we have been running, as well as some of the other causes of resistance for survival. So it's not really as simple as saying, okay, well, how do I get over the resistance? So one of one of the ways is it helps to work actually on the wants first. As I mentioned, our wanting mechanism is unrestrained, so it's going in all directions. And you talked about how you're kind of like a squirrel, wanting to do this, wanting to do that. And that's actually only one challenge that the wanting mechanism creates. There are other challenges it creates. It helps to start with the wants first. And I'll give a couple examples of what I mean so people can to understand. So another challenge, so this is one of the challenge that the wants create, and I call it an overactive wanting mechanism, where a person sees something and they want it, they hear about something they want it, and oftentimes they don't have to see or hear anything. Their mind's just pulling them in every direction. So before they can start on one thing, they're being pulled towards other things to chase. So
Right.
go,
That's late night TV commercials, right?
yes, more or less. So going back to
Oh,
the
social
example,
media.
the doom scrolling, creating all these wants. Oh, I
Yeah.
want this nice car, or I want this house, I want this body.
Yes.
So going back to the gluten-free example, we can have a want to cut out gluten-free, but then the brain can also have a want to, I
Have
don't
chocolate
know,
chip cookies.
yeah, yeah. And those wants can conflict with this. And
Yeah.
unless we pick one, it's gonna be difficult to achieve either. But again, that's just one challenge. There's another challenge that people experience, which I call a high want, or I'm sorry, a strong want. This
Okay.
is where a person wants something really, really badly. It's
Mm,
often referred to as having a burning desire.
okay.
And unfortunately, many coaches and experts talk about it as a good thing, but I would disagree. And
Mm,
that's because when our wants grow, so does our resistance. And a
yeah.
great analogy for this is Einstein's theory of relativity. One of Einstein's theories, the theory of special relativity, says that time and space are not separate. So the three dimensions of space, north, south, east, west, and up and down, as well as time, they're one and the same. It's the same fabric. In fact, scientists and physicists don't refer to space and time separately, but call it space time. And
Mhm.
in many ways, our wants and resistance are one and the same. It's the same fabric. So when our wants grow, so does our resistance. And our resistance growing makes our want grow even more. And that in turn makes our resistance grow even further. And very quickly, this becomes a feedback loop or a runaway process
Yeah.
where now we want this thing really bad and can't have it really bad. And
And
I'm,
now we're frustrated and annoyed and upset, and it
uh,
reminds me, right, what we resist Persist.
Persist, exactly. And so in this situation, it's not even anything else that's going on, the criteria. It's just that we want something so bad that the resistance is as equally strong. And so we can't move forward. And I'm sure people have had experiences where they wanted something and nothing was moving forward for them. And as soon as they let it go, things began to fall into place. So
Yes.
this is how our own wants get in our way. And then we have things like immediate wants, where a person wants things right now, right away, or things are moving fast enough. And what I tell people is most people can achieve most anything they want
Yeah.
if they can be patient about it. And
Yes.
that's because impatience is painful, incredibly painful. It's so painful, we want to do anything to get rid of it. And because it's our wants creating the pain, we want to either give up the want or realize the want as soon as possible. And in both cases, it keeps us from achieving the want. Because when
Mm,
we give it up, we're not moving forward with it. And then when we want to have it right away, we don't do the right things to actually help us get it. And
yeah.
what's really important to understand is a lot of times when we want something, it's not because it'll be enjoyable or fulfilling, but it's only to remove the pain that it brings.
Isn't that funny?
It's fascinating, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we can start with the wants, we can actually pick better wants that naturally aren't creating a resistance in us or isn't making it difficult to go after that thing.
Mm.
And then the second, go ahead. And let me know if I'm talking too much because
No,
it's
you're
pretty
great.
deep.
We want to hear you talk. That's why you're here. We want to know. We want to
Yeah.
so give me an example of that.
Of the immediate want or the strong want or just in general a want.
Yeah, so just in general, how when we can start to identify the real reasons behind the want and
Yeah.
find the real want, how
Yeah.
that has an impact.
Yeah, okay, so let's just say that I go out to a show and I see this amazing DJ, and I'm like, "Wow, I wanna become a DJ,"
Yes.
right? And then I go to the gym the next day, and then I see somebody working out, and I'm like, "Man, I want that body," right? And then I go to the store, and then I see this really delicious dessert, and I'm like, "Okay, I want that dessert." And
Yep.
so now we have a lot of these wants, and some of these wants can be like, "Oh, I really wanna be a DJ, like, right now, like, I would love to be doing a show and having raving fans, like, jumping up and down at me." And so now I have, like, all these wants, and it's gonna be impossible to actually work on and achieve all of them.
Mhm.
In fact, David Allen, author of the best-selling book, Getting Things Done,
Mhm.
said, "You can have anything you want, but not everything." So
Yes.
now I know because I can't go after everything, I have to give up some things. And now we're living in a culture and society where there's just so many more things to do, have, and experience.
Mhm.
And we have a lot more options, and our options have options. So, one of the most important skills when it comes to maintaining or containing the wanting mechanism is that we have to say no to a lot more things than ever
Yes.
before. We
Mhm.
just have to say no. And then I would sit down and look at all the wants and desires that I have. What I would do is recommend people to sit down and write all the wants that they have. The wants they have right now, the wants they had before, for anything small and big. And if their page isn't at least 2 pages, if their list isn't at least 2 pages long, they're lying to themselves because the way the brain works is there's a lot more wants. And we have to say, like, we got to cut out pretty much all of it. We can only pick like three or four that we know that we could stick with or that we want to stick with enough to get the end result. So
Yes.
then we can narrow it down to, all right, well, now, you know what? I would love that cake. I would love to go on this excursion. I would love this car and all that. But if I were to pick just a few, DJing would be one of them. So now we have this one want, and we're gonna stick with it until we get it to the end, so we're not distracted by other wants.
Mhm.
But just because we know what to do and we're not being distracted by all these other things, doesn't mean we're gonna be able to move forward because now we have resistance hitting up.
Yeah.
And resistance is gonna look at that desire and it's gonna say things like, "Well, I don't believe I can succeed. I don't actually have the muscle or habits for DJing." So anytime I go to do it, it's going to create uncomfortability. And that uncomfortability is enough for resistance to stop us from doing something.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is one part of resistance that comes up has to do with pain. If there is pain to doing something, whether it's physical pain, mental pain, or emotional pain, it will stop us from doing it. And that's
Mhm.
because resistance doesn't understand that certain pains can be helpful, like
Yes.
healing pain or growing
Yes.
pain.
Yes.
It's like a simple on off switch. If there is pain or potential for it, block it. So if I'm going to do something new, it means I haven't built a muscle or habit for it. And that means it'll be painful in the beginning.
Yes.
And just by going after it, that pain's going to be enough for the brain to say, no, let's stop. But I
Yes.
have to step in and say, no, I know that it's painful now, but it will subside once I built the muscle for it. So a lot
Yes.
of times we have to take conscious control over some of the resistances decisions. But some of these things get quite deep. One concept that doesn't get talked about, but I think your audience would really resonate with, has to do with authority issues.
Mm.
So, authority issues relate to our unconsciously held attitudes toward authority figures such as parents, teachers, principals, priests, police officers, and even personal development coaches and experts like ourselves.
Right.
And so, what happens is if a person grows up in an environment where they're constantly be told what to do, what not to do, how to do it, and how not to do it, at a certain point, their brain gets fed up and doesn't want to listen to or do anything anyone says.
Yes.
Even if they grow up and want to do those things and it will be helpful for them, the authority issue response kicks in and keeps them from doing it.
Right.
So, this is often the reason why a person doesn't do better in school because of all the teachers telling them to study. This
Yes.
may be a reason why a person may be resistive to being on time because someone was always on their case about being more timely.
Mhm.
But the opposite can also happen. A person may have been told not to watch so much television or eat so much junk food, and now they binge like it's going out of style.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
going back to that example of a person giving up gluten, they could have the desire to give up gluten, and the authority issue kick in and say, no, we're tired of people telling us how to eat, so we're going to eat this to spite them. And
Yes.
it's crazy, but a lot of times people will stay in unhealthy and destructive habits and behaviors just because they're resisting some authority at large. And
Mm.
that's where resistance can come in. So then returning to our DJ example, I could want to do this, but I'm going to hit up all these resistance that come up.
Yes.
And so it really helps to identify the resistance and work through each resistance to be able to move forward.
Yes.
Though what doesn't also get talked about has to do with the tricks of resistance. And this is a very, very, very important concept because when the brain tells us, or when the brain stops us from doing something, it
Mhm.
doesn't tell us it's stopping us. It doesn't say, hey, Dr. D, I know that you're trying to cut out gluten, but it goes against our authority issues and it goes against some of our other resistance, so I can't let you do it.
Yes.
Or, hey, Dr. D, I know you saw that great DJ and you want to be like him and you cut out all your other desires so you can perform on stage, but it goes against our self-image of being a doctor and being studious. So we're just going to stand here and do nothing.
Yes.
That's not,
Oh, it's stuck.
yeah, that's not how resistance manifests.
Right.
Resistance uses a lot of tricks and it has all sorts of tricks up its sleeve. And many of the tricks, you wouldn't think of them as tricks, which is why they work so well and why we so easily fall for them. So, this is where things really get kind of challenging when we're trying to move forward in life and we're trying to make progress and we can't. And some of the tricks are obvious, like television, social media, video games, and drinking and alcohol. And I say it's obvious because when we're doing these things, oftentimes we know we should be doing something different.
Right. Of
Like,
course.
yeah, like when we're doom scrolling, it's like, oh, I
I
really should be studying. Yeah. But some of the tricks are not so obvious and they're sneaky because they can fall into things like over planning. So
Yes.
instead of a person taking action, they spend all their time planning to take action,
Mhm.
buying the right clothes, the right shoes to work out in, figure out exactly what they're going to eat and do all of that. And
Yes.
the danger of planning is that since you're working on the goal, it seems like you're making progress. But if you never leave the planning phase, you're forever planning and never taking action. And
Mm.
this can show up in also perfectionism. A lot of times people re- resist moving forward because they're like, "Oh, I have to make this perfect," or I have to dot all my I's and cross all my T's." And in doing that, they're spending all the time on making things perfection versus actually moving forward on that thing. This is
Right.
very common with authors and artists. Like an author will constantly re-edit their book over and over
Yes.
and never finish it. And so these tricks are really important to understand because we could have a decision and we're really aligned with it. But if the brain says, no, you can't do it, it'll start manifesting in tricks. And
Yeah.
if we're not in the, no, if we don't wear, if we're not aware of the tricks, it could have us spinning in circles without real progress and then, draining our efforts. So going back to the DJ example, if the person, say, is a doctor and they want to be a DJ, there's something out of alignment with that self-image. And so
Right.
the brain is going to say, hey, hold on, this is not for you. And then it'll start throwing up tricks like, hey, remember you said you were going to get that report to somebody? Well, why don't we work on that report first?
Dead. Yeah.
And once the report is done, it's like, oh, we're kind of feeling hungry. So why don't we just fire up the grill and throw on a burger? Once we eat the burger, we're feeling tired. Why don't we take a nap?
Yes.
Once we wake up from the nap, it's like, oh, I haven't talked to my sister in a while. Let me give her a call. We talk, and then all these tricks come up. And then before we know it, we actually forgot the goal that we actually set. So,
Yes. I feel that. I feel that with my own resistance to social media. It's like, "Oh, we'll get to it."
yes.
And then I never really get to it.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that is relieved that I've never gotten to it, right? But
Yes.
there's a part that also holds me back. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking about what you're saying, Cam, and I think about like our clients. So we have my team and I, we have a little joke. We always know that somewhere around month 3 or 4, like
Yeah.
there's like switch that happens for people or many people, not everybody, but a lot of people. It's almost like the way I describe it is like they'll come into one of our programs and so maybe they've gotten past some resistance or things like that, or they're
Yeah.
kind of white knuckling through it, but they have this identity of themselves, right, as like someone who is sick.
Yeah.
And as they start to feel better, they might start to not even consciously begin to self sabotage because that
Yes.
misalignment, or with weight loss, it's a big one, right? So
Yeah.
people lose weight, they start getting more attention. Now that becomes uncomfortable and then they self sabotage that.
Yeah.
They had a completely different identity.
Yeah. And it does start to show up a little bit later. So, like I said, sometimes it can show up where a person gets excited to do something, but they never start. And
Yes.
so the fact that they don't start, there's obviously resistance. They
Yes.
might start, but they'll stop shortly after starting. And that happens too. And then some people are good at making progress, but a certain time down the road, resistance starts slowly creeping on and
Yes.
taking them out of progress.
Yes.
And a lot of these things do come up with a couple of the reasons I gave. The
Yeah.
people one is really, really huge. People don't realize just how much of a resistance people create because we are pack animals. We did evolve to become very sensitive to the thoughts, judgments, actions,
Mm,
and reactions of others.
absolutely.
And what's the fundamental nature of success is that it's going to bring us more attention.
Yes.
So whether we write a great book, more people are going to know about us. Whether we get fit and become healthier looking, it's gonna more people are gonna notice us. Whether we get better grades, it's gonna get the attention of teachers. Now, the more sensitive a person is to the thoughts, judgments, actions, or reactions of another, the more that aspect of resistance will come up for them.
Mm,
So even though the wanting mechanism says, I do want this thing, I do want to become healthy, as they start to become healthy, their resistance goes, oh, this is creating more exposure for us,
Yes.
more exposure than we are comfortable with.
Yes.
So why don't we slow down the progress? And then
Yeah.
we'll do that with the tricks of resistance or through other sabotaging mechanisms. And some of the tricks I would 100% guarantee you and your team receive this. People start getting upset with you and your service, or they might not like that you're telling them what to do
Yes.
because you guys are creating progress. And so the resistance will get mad at you.
Yes.
And as long as the person is mad at you, they don't want to follow you, and then they fall back to their old ways and the resistance wins.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it's classic human behavior, right? So
Yeah.
so Cam, I guess the important question here is how the heck do we get out of this trap that is kind of innately already a
Yeah.
part of us?
Yeah. So, like I said, first, we have to do work with the want. We do have to understand the complexity of the resistance. We do have to pay attention to the tricks that show up. And these are really important because if we just go in thinking, oh, because I want this thing, I should be able to get it, it's the very thing that makes it difficult.
Yes.
But if we go in thinking that, hey, I want this thing, and there's going to be challenges and roadblocks that are going to come my way, and it's going to be really coming from internally,
Mhm.
then when we do get hit up those roadblocks and get derailed, it won't throw us off course. We know what to expect, and then we could say, okay, well, how do we get back and move forward?
Yeah.
And then there are things that we can also do to make sure that there is as little resistance as possible. And
Mhm.
it all has to do with working on the unconscious level.
Yes.
Because when we're dealing with resistance, it's not about necessarily brute forcing and willpower.
Yes.
And that's because what I say is resistance will fight with your effort until the day you die.
Yeah.
And it will, because a lot of people have experienced it. And that's why they start and stop something so many times.
Yes.
And even though they're making progress, it's like the resistance doesn't want them to get to the other end. So the trick is to either reduce the resistance or have it working within us. And so
Right.
we have to work on changing our inner programming. And there are many ways to do that, but something that's really simple that people can use and start on their own is self talk. Self
Mm.
talk are statements that a person says or repeats to themselves of the changes that they want to have or have happen. So, in the two examples that we've been running with, stopping gluten and DJing, a person might repeat statements like, I am healthy and fit. I
Yes.
cut out gluten from my life.
Yes.
I eat only what is good for my body. Or
Yes.
for a DJ, a person would say, I practice DJing every day. I'm getting better and better, and I am playing in front of a crowd. These are simple statements that may not seem like it could do all that much, but it's huge. And that's because words are powerful.
Yes.
They go into our mind and actually create the reality and actions that the words describe. And so if we can start changing our words, over time, they actually will go inward and start changing these beliefs, these self images, these behaviors. It's not rapid or right away,
Mhm.
but let's chip away at our resistance
Yes.
to from it going from something that stops us to something that propels us. And when I start with self-talk, people always think it's kind of an anticlimactic.
Like, that's the golden nugget,
Yeah, and
but
it's
it's
not
important
just
that yeah,
yeah,
simple things make a really big difference. We don't have to be complicated and crazy about
yeah,
everything, you know?
yeah, and especially with resistance, because what I tell people is if you have resistance, you gotta start with small things that get big results,
Yeah.
little actions that lead to big outcomes. And
Yes.
self-talk is the littlest thing a person can do
Mhm.
because you don't even have to be up or sitting. You can literally be laying. All you gotta do is move your mouth.
Yes.
And if you can repeat that, literally start to change things. Now, there's other stuff that we can do. Um, but I think for somebody who just wants some actionable steps, this may be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I can talk about some other stuff, but I know I've been talking a lot and I apologize. So I'll hand over the floor to you for.
No, I think you're doing great. I mean, this is really, this is really insightful for people because I think we can fall into our own traps. And
Yes.
we know that there's something off. We know that there's something going on, but sometimes it's just hard to really pinpoint what it is. And
Yeah.
again, what you resist persists. The other thing I say a lot is sometimes we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? Because if we are shifting what is that, you know, conscious or unconscious identity, then it is going to feel odd. It's going to be like, whoa, I'm not used to this. This is unsafe, right? And then we run back
Yeah.
safety rather than having that trust to continue to move forward. So
Yeah.
how do you go about um, helping people to recognize the resistance, but then also how do we dismantle it?
Yeah. So this isn't always the easiest thing. And what I tell people is if I had the answer, I'd be a billionaire because this is really what psychology, coaching, and a lot of us are trying to do is s- s- lower our barriers so we can do more things.
Yes.
And self-talk is a really great way. Another simple solution is mental practice.
Mm,
So, for those who don't know, mental practice is doing a task, activity, or behavior, but instead of doing it physically, doing it in your mind.
yes.
And before I talk about going further into it, I want to say that in my work, I've written over a dozen books, I've traveled to over 100 countries,
Yes.
and I have done all sorts of unbelievable things like swam with hammerhead sharks, slept on the ice sheets of Greenland, the
Wow.
oldest rainforest in the world in Asia, and things like that. Because I really push myself. And
Yes.
right now, I am doing two types of dance, salsa and bachata. I am DJing. I'm learning how to DJ.
Awesome.
I do rock climbing, and I'm doing podcasting and speaking about a topic
Yes.
or doing something that I was afraid to do, speaking on stage.
Right.
And so I'm really pushing myself to learn how to move past our barrier. This is where a lot of my insights came from.
Yes.
And if I were to take everything I've learned and distill it down to like what makes success, it's just repetition. So
Yes.
the way the brain and body work, it revolves around repetition.
Yes.
So in order to get good at something requires practice. Practice is a form of repetition. In order for something to become comfortable and easy requires habit. Habits are formed through repetition.
Yes.
It is said success is habit. Success is achieved by repeatedly doing something over and over. And then even our beliefs, the things that we talked about that are like our self-image, the things that get in our way, actually came from the repeated messages that we heard,
Yeah.
either from others or to ourselves.
Yes.
And so it's not about how badly we want something, how much we need it, how um, how much it'll help us be cool and all that. Like we think those are the things that are going to help us to move forward, but at the most fundamental, basic level, it just comes down to repetition.
Yes.
What most people don't realize is that repetition goes beyond the physical variety. So we think it's about physically doing something, but there are two more kinds of repetition. And one is verbal. That's what I describe creating statements of the end result that you want and repeating it daily. And the other is visual, which is looking at a behavior that we want to develop and replaying it in our mind. So if we want to develop that behavior or habit of going to the gym and exercising, lifting weights, then we literally close our eyes and imagine ourselves after work driving to the
Mhm.
gym, scanning in, going to the weights and actually doing it.
Yes.
It may not seem like it, but that's a form of repetition that will actually build habits and behaviors. So we can literally help ourselves move through resistance laying in bed by using self-talk and visualization. And
Yes.
again, start with simple tools because when we have resistance, we do the little things that get big results. If a person can get into the habit of repeating the self-talk and doing mental practice, on a consistent basis. And when I say consistency, nothing is consistent unless you're doing it at least every other day to every day.
Yes.
Anything less than that is really not consistency.
Right.
You can get into the habit of doing that thing, you'd be surprised, but the rest just happens on its own. But
Yeah.
then again, there are other layers to how we can move forward, thinking
Mhm.
about activation energy, thinking about product versus process and all that. There's a
Yes.
lot of tips and techniques that have come out that help us on how to move forward and do things, and I think those all work great, but you gotta get to and work on the fundamentals first, because if you
Yes.
don't, resistance will make you stop using those techniques.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? We might resist our ability to resist resistance.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, there goes
Yeah.
the rabbit hole. But I love,
Yeah.
so I think I really resonate with what it is that you're saying about just the verbal, but also
The
that
visual.
visual part of it. Because in the work that I do, I think a lot about the energetics and the frequency of things and how all those things come together. And literally, what we're doing when we're saying stuff is we're starting to engage with a different vibration or a different frequency,
Yes.
right? And then when we begin to visualize, we're not just visualizing, but if we're feeling it like in our body as it's actually happening, we are again changing our frequency and vibration. And the more
Yeah.
we change and shift the frequency and vibration, the more comfortable we get in
Yeah.
that new space there, which I think is really important if we're going to create
Yeah.
change that actually lasts. And I know
Yeah.
sometimes you have to kind of like fake it for a little while before you can actually start to move
Yeah.
that direction. But it's kind of like anything. It's like, you start pushing something, you need a little momentum before it
Yeah.
starts to pick up on its own and start rolling.
Yeah. And I like what you said about the fake it, and it does go back to what you had said earlier, that we have to get comfortable with uncomfortableness.
Yes.
So the faking it, it's us trying to get comfortable with this uncomfortableness of
Right.
something new we're doing.
Right.
And anytime we do something new or different, it's gonna be uncomfortable
Yes.
enough where it creates that pain. Well, resistance will say, "Oh, there's pain, so stop it."
Yes.
And then we have to step in and say, "No, this is gonna be growing pain. This is
Yes.
gonna be healing pain. This is gonna be good pain. So yes, there is pain, but I'm gonna push through it."
Yes.
And a lot of the pain we can reduce if we just start with the self-talk and visualization first,
Yeah. Well,
especially with the self. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say with the visualization too, you're actually seeing it turn out the way that you want. So it's now creating a new safety, right? A
Yes.
safety that maybe wasn't there before. And just for our listeners, and Cam, you probably know this, but this is well documented in the scientific research, right? Like they've done studies, for example, where they've had athletes visualize that they're doing whatever, hitting a
Yeah.
ball, hitting the golf club, or I think there's a famous study where they teach them about playing the piano. And the science shows that if you are mentally rehearsing that over and over again, when you actually come into real life, like it has a whole other level of success.
Yes.
So,
And yeah, so let's talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah,
Again, I do feel like I'm talking too much, so I wanted to say this,
you're
but
good, Lou. You're good.
yeah, okay, great. So this is really important. So now that we know there's 3 kinds of repetition,
Yes,
there's verbal, there's visual, and there's physical.
yes,
Most people think the physical would be the most important,
yes.
but it's actually not. It's actually the verbal that's the most important.
Mm,
And most people would think physical would be the most effective, and it's actually not. It's the visual that's the most effective.
yeah,
So of the 3 forms of repetition, physical isn't even the most important one
yeah,
or the most
that's right.
effective one. And that's what we're starting with first, which is why we have a lot of the challenges. And yes, a lot of the studies do show they have had people learn a behavior just physically. They have people learn a behavior just visually
Yes,
and learn a behavior both visually and physically.
yes.
And they found the people who do it visually outperform the people who do it physically.
Yep.
So if we, let's say, going back to the example of cutting out gluten, if we can see ourselves making non-gluten meals,
Yes.
eating non-gluten meals,
Yes.
when we're in situations where we're presented with non-gluten options and we mentally practice ourselves saying no, it actually shows up without us even being aware in real life. We
Yeah.
might be in a situation where there is gluten, where we normally would have just eaten it or had to resist it, but without even thinking twice, we just say no, just as we practiced it. And then when we go to the grocery store, we find ourselves just picking up non-gluten-free options. So what we have in our homes is non-gluten-free options, so it becomes easier to do. So just by mentally practicing all of that, we can do that. In fact, one of the ways I have been improving my dance, it's through the physical and visual repetition.
Yes.
Dancing is tough, especially if you have 2 left feet and no rhythm and stuff. It's not something you can just will yourself into being. So when I started, I had to, take another approach, look at it a different way. And I'm like, okay, so how can I make it easier? First, I created a set of self-talk statements around dance.
Yes.
I regularly repeat, and even this is part of my regimen, even to this day. I am an excellent dancer. I learn and pick up moves easily. I
Yes.
remember all the moves and execute them with precision and control. I
Yes.
maintain correct posture, frame, connection, and hand position throughout the dance. I have rhythm and soul. I confidently and smoothly move my body and my partner to the rhythm and beat of the music. Notice how fluidly I remembered and said that. It's
Yeah, you
because I
got it.
said,
It's
yeah.
yours.
And the
Practice.
more,
Perfect.
yeah, so the more I've said it, the
Yes.
better my dancing has become,
Yeah.
even though it wasn't improving with just physical practice.
Yes.
And now part of my regimen is also visualizing it. So
Mhm.
when I go out to a social, I'll learn some moves, and then I make sure throughout the week I'm visualizing myself do it. And what's really cool when you mentally practice the move, you can literally slow down what you're doing so you could see all facets of how it should be done. You could speed it up, you can turn the angle and all that, which
Yes.
is not possible when you're doing it physically.
Yes.
But when you are mentally practicing, we can create all sorts of scenarios. So
Yes,
going back to
you can.
the gluten thing, we can put ourselves in the challenging scenarios where we might have a brother or parent who's always nagging us about eating the wrong stuff. So
Mhm.
we can put ourselves in that situation and see ourselves saying no and even letting them know that we don't appreciate them pushing this stuff on us. Like mentally practice that. We can see ourselves and driving to the better stores to buy the better options versus just randomly going to any store. So there's a lot we can do with mental practice that's just not possible physically. And
Yes.
so when we start with these two things, it does help. And there's another layer of, again, I say there's a lot to our wants and the challenges it creates. There's a lot of reasons for resistance. There's a lot of tricks that come up, and there's a lot of ways to move forward. So I gave two simple ones, but I want to also talk about something that I call how a person takes action. And
Mm.
what I mean by this is going back to some people are good at getting excited about some things, but not starting.
Yes.
Other people are good at starting, but they stop. Some
Yes.
people are good at making progress and then they sabotage them before getting to the end.
Mhm.
And then some people actually get to the end, but they stop doing what got them there, so they fall off.
Yes.
So there is a specific thing a person can do at each level. So if a person is good at starting things, the thing that would be great for them, or no, the person who's good at getting excited about a lot of stuff but not starting, is to pick one want and cut out all the rest.
Yes.
No matter what other wants your brain is producing, don't think about, worry about, or consider them until the first is finished.
Mhm.
For the people who are good at starting, but they stop off, use a technique from meditation. So, meditation isn't about keeping your thoughts clear the whole time or
Right.
holding on to a specific thought the entire time, because naturally we're going to fall off. But the trick is not to keep ourselves from falling off, but just jumping right back when we do. And that's the same with the person who starts and stops. As soon as they stop, jump right back when they do.
Right.
And then if they stop again, which will happen, jump right back and keep
Yes.
doing it until they get to the finish.
Yes.
For the person who's really good at sticking with things but seems to sabotage themselves, once they're making progress, kind of like you had said around the 3-month mark, things start coming up. Well, for those people, it's important to understand that the way the mind and body are built, it needs to build a muscle for everything we do. So we
Yes.
need to build a muscle for starting things. We need to build a muscle for stopping or for sticking with things. And then we need to build a muscle for finishing things. And
Yes.
if a person hasn't finished many things in life, then they have to put in every effort that they could call up to make sure they start
Right.
finishing things.
Yes.
And once they start doing that, their body will get comfortable finishing things. It'll be easier to finish more things.
Yeah.
And then this is an important one. The people who are good at finishing things, but once they get to the finish line, they're like, hey, I'm here. I could stop doing everything that I did to get here. And then they start falling off. This is where the yo-yo dieting happens.
Yes, of course.
For them, it's really important to understand that success is harder to keep than achieve.
Absolutely.
Like success is already hard to achieve. I mean, it's hard. But once we get there, a lot of the motivations and the inspiration that we had trying to get to the end line, they go away because we're at the end line. And so
Yes.
then now we have to call up our own motivation, inspiration to
Yes.
make sure we keep doing the thing that got us there. And
Right.
it's easy to fall off. And like I said, it's a reason people yo-yo a lot is because they get to the end and think that they're just going to stay there, but that's not how it works.
Right. Right. There's always something else and there's always another space. And I love what you're saying because the more that we practice getting to the end, we're actually now creating a new identity. So we're no longer the person who doesn't
Yeah.
complete things. We are the person who completes things. And
Yes.
that in and of itself becomes our,
Yeah.
our new identity. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of really, really powerful stuff. I think our listeners are going to have to go back and listen multiple times to pick up so many of these profound things to kind of help get through that
Yeah.
resistance, like you said. So I know, Cam, our listeners are probably like, how can we find out more about you? I know you said you have some free resources on your
Yeah.
site. Would you like to share that with them?
Yeah. So I have 3 free gifts for everyone who made it this far to the podcast. The first gift is prompt engineering for your mind. People don't realize that the human brain was the original ChatGPT, and and we can prompt it to not only give us solutions, but act on those solutions.
Love it.
So when I talked earlier about how it's really important to work with the mind and the unconscious level, well, this is one way to do it. So
Mhm.
that's one free gift. The second free gift is build habits and behaviors in your sleep. And it goes back to the self-talk. We can literally self-talk ourselves to move us in the direction that we want
Yes.
without having to use a lot of willpower and brute force. If we just speak the right words, we can do that. And the second guide will kind of give the structure of how to do that or go into more detail than we did here. Then the third guide is End Procrastination Sabotage, which more or less talks about the topic of internal resistance that we're talking about here. And it'll go into how other ways our wants get in our way, other causes of resistance, and even some more tricks that we didn't get a chance to discuss here.
Yes.
So they can get all 3 of those guides on my website at kamknight.com, KAMKNIGHT.com. And if anybody wants to do one-on-one work with me, I have developed a technique that helps people go into their unconscious and we work on the resistance
Mhm.
in their unconscious mind. And why this is important is because we're not dealing with um, issues that apply to everyone, but
Yeah.
specific things related to that person. And so it makes it much quicker to not only access, but release the blocks that are getting in the way. And if
Yeah.
anyone's interested in that, they can email me at mentor@kamknight.com.
I love that. Thank you so much for being with us today, for
Yeah.
sharing your gifts and your wisdom, and for helping us to see, like, hey, maybe there's more going on than meets the eye, and
Yeah.
we need to dive in just a little bit further.
Yeah.
Thank you again for being with us here today. And everyone, we'll see you next time for the next episode. This is Dr. D reminding you to tune into your body, connect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Be sure to grab a copy of the True Wellness Checklist right in the show notes. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you for the next episode.